For many, many years. I'm kind of I guess I think of myself as a little bit of a self-made kind of guy, and goals have been the way I've done that. I mean, I grew up in Oak Park, which is the first suburb of Detroit, and I got into goal setting in high school. And one of my big goals when I was in high school was to go to Michigan, University of Michigan, and it was a tough go because financially it was a stretch. If you could believe it, it cost $300 a year in
Ugh.
1965, and that was a stretch. So it gives you a sense of inflation. But I did get to the University of Michigan, and I've been a goal setter ever since. And I've learned a methodology which I'm going to be using today. It's probably somewhat similar to the SMART goal system that you've used, but it's got my own little variation. I learned this from a guy whose name is Al Fan. I think I wrote about him in my email this week, and he was a self-made guy, not any education, from Cleveland, came to New York, started a theater group and taught in the New York schools, and that's where I got to meet him. And in the 60s, he was reading every self-help book he could find, and that helped him to come up with this goal system that he taught everybody. And he went on to be a big success, and appearing in many, many TV shows, movies, and many of the people in the theater group also was a success. Probably the biggest one is a woman named Brene Watson, who I knew as a teenager, and she has had many roles you probably would recognize, or many commercials. One of her biggest was to be Will Smith's mother on his TV show. Help me remember the name of it. What's the big Will Smith?
Fresh Prince of Bel Air, that one?
Yeah, Fresh Prince. There you go, Fresh Prince of Bel Air. Thanks, Steve. You win the official Fresh Prince T-shirt, Steve, from coming up with
Ooh,
that. So.
I've been wanting one of those my whole life. Thank God.
uh, so anyway, that's what got me into goal setting, and I decided in about 1985 to create a kind of a community around the idea of goal setting, and several people in this cast today have been part of that. Larry Eiler, John Costa, other people are going to be coming on who have been part of that goal community, Rick Reed. And what we've done is yearly kind of set goals, and people have been in small groups of 10. And I've got several of those groups going now. And if any of you are interested in following up in this workshop today, there's the opportunity to join one of those groups. Larry Eiler, could you just comment on your experience with that? Are you on? Yeah, go ahead, Larry. I think we're hearing him. No mic. Okay. You got to unmute, Larry. There you
Yeah,
go.
I'm unmuted now.
Good. You look
Okay.
better.
I did it several years ago, and I've developed several friends out of it. One of whom I talk with every Thursday afternoon for 45 minutes about what's going on. And this person was a dean at the U, and he's turned into be a very good friend. So it's a valuable place to get some insight and from different people who are smarter than me. So
Okay. Well, then it's hard to find people that are smarter than you. So that's probably a value of this.
I don't think that's too hard.
So anyway, what we're going to do today is it's going to be very interactive. I'm going to just give you a little bit of an overview about some of the ideas about goal setting, and then I'm going to have breakout groups. And today, I think this year is good, and last year were pretty unique because we almost talked about the biggest thing was work goals, and people would talk about that and share those. The goal now is kind of like number one on that Maslow hierarchy, and it's really staying alive. And I think it's kind of unprecedented for those of us that have been relatively healthy to make it a goal to stay alive. But if you think about your life over the last year and looking into a fair amount of this year, it's going to be creating behaviors that are going to maximize your ability to stay alive. And that, of course, is staying away from people, which is pretty weird because I'm a big one on relationships. But right now, this is the kind of relationships we have, Zoom casts. I'm actually creating Zoom dinners now with people. And I have a men's group and another couple groups. So we only meet by Zoom. But staying alive and staying well seems to be the major goal that most people are dealing with. And I think when we talked couple of years ago, that really wasn't on the hierarchy. But that's one goal, and that's the first one I'm going to ask you to consider is what is your goal for staying alive? In other words, the goal might be the hierarchy, the why is staying alive, but what are the things that you're doing to try to do that? So it might be social distancing. It might be diet. I know my friend John Costa has been very involved in health through trying to get his diet right, and he's turned things around in terms of some cardiovascular challenges. Other people have uh, developed routines that are going to keep them healthy. So the first goal we're going to talk about is this goal of health and wellness, and what is your goal for the year? I'm an advocate of not choosing too many goals because my sense is that it's really hard for the brain to manage too many directions. So I'm an advocate of maybe having 4 or 5 goals at the max, and one that's really important because in terms of willpower, managing one is hard enough. And if you think about it, every day we're trying to improve in some ways. Maybe it's losing weight, which is a common one, really common these days. It might be trying to change the way you relate in a relationship, like being more positive or being less angry or whatever it might be. So all these are important in terms of when I think of health goals, I think of both um, physical health, like I'm mentioning the need for exercise, for correct diet, but there's also mental health, which is a big challenge right now as we're isolated and worried and scared about getting this virus. Uh, Anybody have vaccines out there yet? I don't see any hands. My first family member that's going to get a vaccine this afternoon, I hope, and that's my 98-year-old mother-in-law who's been called on that she's eligible for the vaccine, so she's going
Great.
to get it this afternoon. But most everybody I know, unless they're a medical provider, has not had that yet. So that's the first thing I want to ask you to do is to go into a small group and talk about your health goals and your well-being goals. And it may be a mental thing, it may be meditating, it may be changing your attitude, it may be getting a therapist and working on some issues that you have that have come up during this time. So this is what I'm going to ask you to talk about. We're going to have at least three different groups, and they're all random. So you're going to talk to probably a variety of people today. And so each of these groups is going to be 10 minutes. Take your time to introduce yourselves very quickly and then go in and start to talk about your goals. I don't expect people to necessarily have finished their goals today, but this is like the first step. And I'm going to follow up in a few weeks where we can be more specific about what our goals are. So we'll have another one of these workshops in a few weeks. Uh, I'm a big advocate of when you think about the goals, that there's a couple things that are important. First of all, is what is the goal? Be very clear about and specific about some kind of a measurable goal. So, for example, if it's to get into therapy and I'm meeting with you next January, did you get into therapy or did you not? And did you stick with it? So that might be a very specific goal. Let's say it's a weight goal. You're trying to lose 5 pounds, 50 pounds, whatever it might be. That's very measurable. Some of the other ones are a little trickier to measure in terms of well-being goals. It may be you want to start on some kind of a meditation program, and you're going to do it either through studying through a guru, or you're going to do it through like one of these like these apps like Headspace or Calm. How many are using one of those apps now to help you with your stress? Anybody using one of those? Jan? Okay, Carl. Which one are you using, Jan?
Headspace.
Headspace. Is that, you do it pretty regularly?
I haven't lately, but I did constantly for a year. Yeah, I thought it was really good. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
my
also,
wife Pat, who Jan
yeah,
is
right.
doing that daily, and she's found it very centering. She's a writer, so it really helps her prepare herself for her writing for the day. Um, so the first thing is, what is your goal? The second thing, and this is all about brain research too, like the brain wants to know where are we going, and then the brain wants to know by when are we supposed to get there. So my son yesterday left for a trip and he went to Denver, and his goal was we're going to drive all day to Denver. So and he estimated it took, I don't know, 15 hours, and they had it all planned out with their dog. And so they got to Denver at 11:30 last night after having left at 5:30. But the brain wants to know, what is your timetable on something? So if you say, I'm going to start doing Headspace, by when are you going to do it? Let's say I'm going to say, well, I'm going to do it tomorrow, or I can't do it this month, but I'm going to do it in February, I should say. So creating a date is really important for this. The third thing is, why are you going to do it? What is the why? What's the reason? So a lot of times we set goals, but we don't really know what the reason is. Like losing weight. Well, a lot of people say the reason for doing that is because I want to get healthier. Well, okay, so how do you know it's going to make you healthy? Maybe the real reason is that you can't get into your pants anymore, and that you're really frustrated because every time you try to get that button closed, it won't close, and that's upsetting you because you know that's not making you look that good. So getting underneath what are the why, and often the why is more than one thing. There's several reasons why you're doing something. The fourth thing is how are you going to do it? And this is kind of like, what's your plan for getting this done? So let's again say you want to find a therapist. What's your plan for finding a therapist? Well, I'm going to call Rob, who is a therapist that knows a lot of therapists, and ask for a suggestion of who's good. Or I want to use my insurance, so I'm going to go on my insurance panel and find out who will take Blue Care Network for therapy. Uh, and then maybe you want to read up on it. So do I want cognitive behavioral therapy? Do I want psychoanalysis? Do I want something else? What kind of family therapy? So maybe my plan is to read up on therapy. So that's the next part. And then the last one is, who are you going to use as your support group? And I think that most goals work better if you let other people know that you are including them. You have a team kind of. So Celestine, if you're trying to create something, I know Celestine's in a job search right now. So Celestine, maybe you don't want to just do it alone, but you want to talk to other people. Like Rick Reed, who's part of this group, is also in a job search. So maybe you want to create a little community of people that are all doing it and help you not only find a job, but find the right job that works for you. Maybe you want to have a community in your own community of people, that kind of a Celestine advisory board that helps Celestine, who's in telecom and very, very, what is it, banking and telecom, that kind of is your area, Celestine, internet. Uh, Go ahead, unmute yourself there. No, I still can't hear you. Unmute. There.
I was in banking in IT.
IT, okay, IT area. So that's the last part, is to create. So I'll just review those again, and I'm going to send out a PowerPoint on this to all of you afterwards. But one is, what is your goal? By when do you want to achieve it? Why do you want to achieve it? How? What's your sort of preliminary plan for it? And who's your support group? So there's 5 things that you need to keep in mind. I've been writing these goals down on index cards, and I've been keeping it in this box here. This is a box of index cards. This goes back to 1968. So I've been writing these cards down, and I'll try to pick out one here at random, see if it's relevant these days. But many of the goals I've achieved, some of them I have not. So here's one from 19, I can't even read, 1918. This is about full functioning for my leg. I have a nerve damage in my leg. So this is like to get into physical therapy and to work daily on my physical therapy routine. And this was 12, 13 years ago. I'm still working on this. It's something that's chronic, so it's not going to get better. But, my success is like, have I done something every day to work on that? Have I done the exercise the physical therapist has given me? So this whole box, as you can see, is filled with index cards going back to 1968. And, the first one may have been to get a job teaching in New York City. I did get that job, worked in the New York City schools for a couple of years before I went back to graduate school. when I was in New York, my goal was to get into graduate school. I read about this program at Harvard that really sounded outstanding, but I didn't think I was Harvard's quality stuff. I didn't think I had the undergrad scores and, what it takes to get into Harvard. But I set it as a goal, and the program was so great that it really was what I wanted. It was clinical psychology and organizational psychology. So I applied, did everything I could to get in, and I got in. And the irony is, that's the only place I got in. So I got turned down by 3 colleges, 3 universities, and got into Harvard. So go figure, And that certainly was a changing point in my life. Getting married was a goal. And that was, I actually had a girlfriend at the time, so I wasn't just looking to get married, but the goal was to marry Pat. And we've been married now. We're going into our 51st year. So so far it's been successful, and hopefully it will continue to be. And I have, as I look around the board here, I know many people have created goals. I see some of my ex-students. Haley, you're out there. Where are you these days? You in Idaho or what?
Yep, in Boise, Idaho.
Yeah. So you were in my class. You remember some of your goals that you set in class at University of
Yeah,
Michigan?
one of them. So I was in your class my first year of grad school, and one of them was to find a job that would allow me to travel. And the first job that I got out of grad school, I moved to Baton Rouge, and I got to live down there for a little bit. And then my next job, I used to travel in the before time, so I was able to really work toward that.
Okay, great. Well, we're gonna break into small groups, and I think all of you are kind of familiar with this drill. This is a little bit different on Zoom. I always think of it as magic. I want to click my heels, and pretty soon you'll appear in a breakout room with 3 other people. And the first goal that you're going to be talking about is a health goal. And again, it could be physical health, mental health, and of course, for everybody, the goal is to stay alive. But we're going to try to go down a couple levels and think, what is your plan to stay well and healthy this year? Is there something you're going to do different, something you want to achieve that you haven't achieved before? Do you want to overcome some kind of a challenge that you might have? So I'm not going to take a lot of questions right now. We will talk about this. So when you come back, please have a designated speaker who might talk about what you talked about in your groups. And any questions that come up, of course, you could put on the chat. You kind of know the drill at this point. So abracadabra, Emily, who's my great associate, is going to do the magic and throw us into small groups. We'll have 10 minutes in each small group. So you could try to use there'll be 3 in each group. You could try to use the time accordingly. Emily, you want to take us away? I was going to say, hi, David.
How are you, Rob? Happy
Good.
to-
I see you're doing well. I see your posts every once in a while. Looks like you're eating well.
I think that's a compliment. Yes, thank you.
You're cooking, right? So
I am cooking a great deal now,
Yeah.
and I don't think that is going to change. That's
Good.
a new goal that I didn't know I had.
Okay, good. So we're going to do a little bit of discussion to breakout. What went on in the breakout rooms? Kevin, you want to start?
Yeah,
Just
Sure. In
yourself.
our room, we were talking a little
Would you
bit
introduce
about-
yourself, Kevin, and then go from there?
Oh, certainly. Yes. My name is Kevin Lill. I'm the manager of individual and corporate giving at St. Vincent and Sarah Fisher Center in Detroit. We do GED programming and after school programming for youth. Right now, a lot of online activities. One of the foremost agencies doing GED education in the city of Detroit. And it's an honor to work for them. For the past 13 years before that, I just moved and changed roles in July of last year. Previous to this, I was the Director of Development at Peace Neighborhood Center. If people are more familiar with that in the Ann Arbor area, all the after school programming and tutoring and mentor programs that they do for young people, and also what they do for the adults in those families as well. That's been my career path. I'm mainly in fundraising, but really enjoy working for organizations that are working to increase social justice and help individuals achieve their goals. So interesting to be here setting goals today. In our breakout session, we were mainly discussing how the two are interlinked really between, you know, setting physical goals and also having the mental health goal that typically is the necessary component behind that physical goal. So, you know, in my case, obviously I was talking about, I want to, you know, lose a certain amount of weight, but there are mental shifts that need to happen in order to make that physical shift happen. And so Larry was talking about, you know, some of the things that he has encountered in his life. And then Annie also went through some of the different changes that she went through in her life. And so I think that's something you need to bear in mind, that you can't just set the physical aside from the mental. They're completely interlinked.
Okay, great. Any other spokesperson that wants to share what happened in their small groups? Greg? Oh, no, that's Kevin. Okay, go ahead, Kevin. Unmute. Yeah.
Yes, hi. Good morning, everyone. Kevin Johnson. I'm an economic development planner with SEMCOG, Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. We cover the 7-county region here in Southeast Michigan. I'm involved with leading development of the regional economic development strategy, which we're going to be adopting in a couple of months. And the big shift that we've had this past year is to really put a specific emphasis on both the importance of health and also diversity, equity, and inclusion in building resilience for our regional economic development. Let's see, so our group was a combination of goals for both physical and mental health. Mine, for example, was very specific. I've never been good at pull-ups. Going back to high school, I do all these kinds of activities, but you know, that's one that I really kind of want to focus on this year. And I want to be able to do 10 before the end of the year. And so, but that involves a lot of different things because so many different muscles in concert. And so a lot of it is with others is kind of reading up and understanding what's involved with getting to that goal. So some goals were, you know, already doing physical activity, but bumping it up a notch to an extra day a week and working with trainers as a support group to get you there. Mental health, important as well. And it can be very specific in terms of understanding your family's financial situation, really understanding where the money is coming from, where it's going, and having it laid out in very clear charts and in a specific manner to provide that ease of mind of things going forward. As far as support group, looking at other family members, in-laws that are good at that and tapping into that knowledge in order to accomplish that overall goal of understanding the finances and ultimately mental health.
Okay, thank you. Any other people want to speak about their goals in their small groups? Okay, Marina?
Hey again, I'm Marina. I am still a neuroscience PhD student, exploring other options. We had kind of an array of things in our group. My goal was to practice yoga 4 days a week instead of 3 days a week, which is what I was doing before, and also to eat only when I'm hungry 4 days a week. So I want to start practicing more intuitive eating. And then we talked about sleep, how the importance of sleep and how Greg is quite a night owl, getting 4.5 hours of sleep reported back from his Fitbit. Yeah. So he's talking about shifting around some things in his lifestyle to accommodate that. And then we also talked about the last 7 or 8 pounds. Locke is talking about fine tuning and how he thinks that the best way to accomplish that is to try to prioritize exercise, especially after that first half-an-hour chunk.
Great. Well, we're going to move on to the next one, just in terms of trying to keep timing going. And the next thing I'm going to ask about, some people have already talked about it, is relationship goals. And I think that this is really crucial. I mean, we've seen in the change in the government, I think one of the biggest problems that we had with our last president was he was terrible at relationships. And you could see by the end of his term, he had nobody left that he was friends with. He managed to burn out everybody. And I'm sure you've all worked with people, not as extreme as Donald, but bosses or other people who have burned out their relationships. And most people are dealing with somebody in their family who is either really difficult or you were cut off from. Those of us that are in the therapy world know that that's one of the most dangerous things is where people cut off. I've got a relative who's said he wants to go off the grid and he's basically isolated himself. And I really worry about him because isolation is unhealthy. So one of my goals might be how to connect with this guy again. And I've tried 12 different ways and none of it has worked, but I still continue to worry about him. So we're going to talk about relationship goals next. And again, I think it's important to specifically pick one thing, you know, so if let's say if you're married or you're in a significant relationship, perhaps it's got to do with some way that you're behaving that you think contributes to less than full engagement and less than full satisfaction in that relationship. I've worked with people where anger is a big problem, and you know everything goes along until somebody loses their temper, and that. So I want to work with that person, let's say on anger management, whatever the heck that means. More commonly, tuning out, you know, so that these days a lot of people are not really listening in a relationship because they're looking at their phones or they're somehow distracted. And I think again with the elections, a lot of us really checked our phone like every day, you know, to see every minute. I mean, not every day, but every hour to check to see what was happening because it was such a tense time. So what is it that you want to do better in relationships? Maybe it's something in general where you want to, you know, create more friendships. Maybe it's something specific that you want to do. One of the things that I don't want you to create a relationship goal is changing somebody else. I think that's, you know, my relationship goal is that my wife will treat me better. No, that's not good. You know, Greg, that's for you, right? No, yeah, you want it, but it's about, and I think this is going back to many deep learnings that it starts within ourselves, that we can only, it's so hard to change ourselves. So the idea that what do we want to work on? If you're a boss, and I know many of you are, maybe you want to change your relationship with some of your key workers. Maybe you want to get out of a relationship because it's a toxic relationship and you know that it's draining you, but you don't know how to get out of it. So these are all things that I want you to talk about next. And again, I know this is a private group. You may not want to reveal detailed things about yourself or about other people. I would hope everybody would keep confidences, but with a group like this, I don't want to have anybody feel that they've said something that is going to, you know, come back to hurt them. So I would hope everybody could respect that. But in general, talk about what is your goal for improving relationships this year? So Emily, are we ready to go back into small groups? All right, we're going to be different groups because you know, first of all, the technology doesn't work to have you in the same group, but otherwise, one of my goals is for you all to get to meet each other. So we're going to have another 10 minutes and talk about relationship goals. All right, who would like to report out with what they did in the small group? Kim, can I call on you to? Kim, unmute.
Hi. Okay.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, we had an amazing conversation about the importance of empathy. And we talked about how a lot of times men, as they're growing up, don't necessarily focus on empathy as much. But going forward, it is really important to focus on empathy. And a lot of people don't even know where to start. So we were going to talk to you about possibly doing some work around that. I feel that in our schools, where I spend a lot of time advocating for education, that would be an amazing thing to start with to help kids understand so that they're more accepting of all people coming from all places. So that was, I think, the biggest takeaway from our conversation.
Rob wrote a whole book on that.
Yeah, I did. I wrote a whole book on it. So
well, that's what we should start with then.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I worked with Eric, who was a guy who already had a lot of empathy. Eric, you want to report out what you did in your group?
Sure. Yeah, we had a good time. We talked about emotional intelligence. Yeah, we actually had a nice arc. We started with one who wanted to really focus on sort of the valuing of self within relationships and valuing those relationships in terms of being key to their mental health. We had someone who wanted to work on establishing new relationships and perhaps developing some significant bonds there. And we had someone who wanted to talk about working on relationships at work, where they wanted to empower their employees and those that they lead to feel like they could make more of their own decisions, which would then have a positive impact on his situation, where then he would have more time to do other things. And then I talked a little bit about my goal, which sounds sort of like I'm breaking the Dr. Rob rule of looking at someone else, but I'm trying to change my wife's work situation by changing her medical practice to a very different style and format. And we're going to be building the team for that. And so I was just talking about how starting a bunch of work relationships from scratch is going to be very challenging to try and get a high performance team going around this new business entity. So that was ours, a very, very nice sort of range of things to talk about, all of which emphasizing the power of these human connections and the need to do that and get it right. So
in our group, I don't know if people are still on, but we had an interesting group. All three people were talking about having kids at home during COVID and the strained relationship. So
worst adult roommates ever.
Yeah, so that's a, in terms of mental health, that's one that's putting a lot of stress on families right now, especially with the people locked down. Celestine was talking about it twice in Rwanda now. They've locked down and they have a harder time with the online education. And even though kids are at home, it's hard to maintain, get them off the Xbox, one person was talking about. So some good ideas came up, like scheduling times with the kids, scheduling. One person talked about doing a volunteer activity with her 15-year-old. So, some really good ideas came out. Anybody else want to report out about what they did? Okay, Brick.
Yeah, from my perspective, we had great perspectives with Latanya and Jan on our discussion, but I was kind of talking about the foundations of listening, which I think ties into empathy. And we were talking about just watching the transition of even the presidents. They're at opposite ends of the spectrum on the empathy scale, of course. But I took the Dale Carnegie course way back when I was a lot younger, and it was all about having that authentic interest in the other person, which really was investing in your listening. Like, are you listening to understand or listening to hear? And I know, Rob, you live in that space, so that's something I need to work on. I really just think listening and being present in the moment, as you talked about before the breakout, is critical to the foundations of any relationship.
Yeah, and actually, you said I live in that world. I think it's harder for me to listen now with all the distractions.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like my relationship with my cell phone because it's too easy to look at something. I try to sign off Facebook and then I go back, and it's just very compelling to listen to your machine instead of listening to your partner. So thank you. Rick.
Yeah. How do we do better there? I don't know.
Yeah. Drop your phone into the toilet. That'll probably do it.
I've done that.
Yeah. I won't ask you whether you fished it out or not, but that's a different story.
That's a whole different story. Bag of rice.
So we're going to, since people are liking this breaking out, we're going to do one more. And actually there's 4 categories that I use. The third and the fourth are kind of related, and that is about a work and financial goal. So not everybody works to make money. Most people do. But I'd like you to discuss what is your goal for 2021 for work and or finances. So we're going to do one more breakout group. And when we come back, we're just going to be enough time to wrap up. So this will be a little bit shorter. Emily, can you make this for about 7 minutes, just so we have some wrap up time? All right, Emily, take us away, and we'll do a little bit shorter this time. So we'll see if the random says you should be with one person you know and 2 people you don't know. So we see what happens. Welcome back, everybody. I think I'm unmuted here. Let's see. Can everybody hear me? Great, okay.
Yes.
I don't want to keep people too late because I know everybody's got so many things to go to, right? You know, so that's a laugh, huh, David? Yeah. So, but I do want to take a few minutes. If you have to sign off, that's fine. But how many would like to see some kind of follow-up to this in a couple weeks? Raise your hands if you'd like to do that. All right, great. Well, I'm gonna organize that, and I'd like you to. I'll send out an email, but I'd like to be a little bit kind of collaborative on this and hear from you what ideas you have about how to follow up, how we can stay connected. I think through the breakouts, you can see the power of sharing your ideas with other people, to getting feedback, hearing how things are different parts of the country. We had people represented from all the way from Africa to the West Coast, East Coast. And I think that one of the nice things about Zoom is it enables us to have a much wider community than we used to have.
Yes.
So I ask of you just to post any ideas you have on the chat now for follow-up, and also to I'll email you and ask you if you want to share some things. I'll be writing about this on Monday and Dr. Rob. So if there's anything, any insight that you want to have that you want to share, I know Larry's written a lot, Jan has written a lot, Eric, and if there's anything about goal setting that you want to share with the group, or anything you need from the group, to make the Dr. Rob a little bit more collaborative, where other people have a chance to talk about some of the resources and some of the thoughts they have about achieving their goals for the year.
Thank you.
Any last comments from people? Wrap up comments? What are y'all taking away from this?
Good thoughts, and I've got to write down my goals. It's 3 weeks into the new year. I have goals in my head, but I don't have them written down. I got to write them down.
Well, I forgot to mention, Larry, I write down my goals every month. I have one of these little date planners that's monthly. And at the front of that, when I start a new month, I always write down goals, and there's only a little room in it. So I usually only write 5 or so, but they're pretty good. We haven't talked about sustaining goals, but that's another goal category, like sustaining good relationships. Anybody else? David, I haven't heard from you. You always have good stuff to say. What's your wrap up here?
Well, I really love, and props to Emily for her being a great producer this morning. I love the breakouts and the opportunity to meet and interact with people who I never knew, who I kind of know, and then to circle back with the ones that I do. That's a great use of the tool, and so hard to do when we're at Zingerman's. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
What was so interesting was hearing everybody riff on each other. So as the little short breakout groups advanced, they were getting richer and deeper for our interaction. And that kind of artificial intimacy that you get from Zoom. You know, when this started back in March, we were all like staring at the screen wondering, oh shit, I'm on television. Now we're actually kind of doing the group hug thing.
The group hug.
Now we can have a group hug, but what we can't do yet, David, and which I want to do is have you provide some food for the group.
Oh, okay. That'll be my throw in for the COVID relief party when we're freed from our captivity.
Well, now I just got a message that I got to wrap up, because talk about Zoom. We're going to babysit our 4-year-old granddaughter in Queens, New York. Because her parents are both on phone calls at 10 a.m. So I've got to wrap up and go to talk to Sammy on the telephone here. So I'm going to read to her and play a game of a bug bingo. So
oh, what great grandpa duty you have.
Yeah, it's fun.
Good luck with that, Rob.
All right, good.
Thanks
We'll talk to you all in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
Stories.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.